This is a pretty big and heavy topic. How do you stop fearing afterlife and death? So, I want to give you a little bit of a personal experience on how I thought about this before, but also how to think about it in terms of a Buddhist perspective. So, this video is kind of a two-parter. Um, you may or may not know that I come from a hypnosis background. My dad was a hypnotist. Well, still is. My father is a hypnotist, but throughout his training, he needed people to, hypnotize and, try all these techniques that he learned. So he frequently experimented with me. So, in hypnosis, right, you have the general hypnosis where you open the door to your unconscious and then you start seeing the things that are most emerging because, for unconscious reasons, you get into that. Oh, okay, so the elevator door to my unconsciousness opens. And right now, it's like a rocky surface, but there's also like a lot of moss. And nearby, there's this really big tree. Okay, then my dad would be like, okay, then what do you think the tree means? And the tree is like, it's also very moist. There's a lot of water and so on. So I get to unpack like what that is. So this is general hypnosis. And the other thing is like past life regression. So I go back and then my dad is like, okay, so you're gonna take the staircase down and at the bottom of the staircase there's gonna be a door, usually doors, and then you open the door and then the past life that wants to be seen right now, it's gonna emerge at your in front of you. Okay, so then now when you're ready, three, two, one, and then the door opens and then I go in and then whoa, there's like this, whoa, I'm seeing like a bear right now. And my dad would be like, okay, is that bear you? I'm like, oh, is it me or did I just hunt this bear? And then so I explore what the past life is related to the topic that I want to explore with my dad, right? So this kind of a thing, past life regression, and there's also spirit releasing and all these different things. Okay, but in one of these hypnosis sessions, my dad wanted to, well, we were exploring a past life, and then my dad walked me through death, right? So in my past life, I was dying, and like, oh man, I was crying so much because death felt so real, and all the people I love, they were here, and then like and then I can't see them anymore, and it's like this thing called life. I felt it leaving my hands, and then I let go, and then like, and like the physical realm separated from my spiritual realm, and then I see the spirit, right? And then my dad was like, okay, what happens now? And then I saw this. So this is my personal experience. I saw this uh purplish kind of a cosmos. And it was this like entire universe, but there was this like really purplish presence to it. And then inside of it, when I go inside that like afterlife, this purplish afterlife, there's nothing there. And but it's not this, oh my god, it's so scary, there's nothing there, but it's like there's this really deeply comforting feeling of being there and there's nothing else. But at the same time, it feels like I'm surrounded by something. And there was no pain, there was no reason to fear. And that moment, I felt so deeply in peace. And I was like, this is really pleasant. This isn't that bad at all. So that was my first kind of a, experience with the, afterlife. And but the thing is, you know what? Hypnosis, not many people believe in it. Many people believe in it. So up to you to take whatever you want out of this experience. Can you have an afterlife experience that and under hypnosis that's actually really scary? Yeah, you could. And is that real though? As long as it's up to belief, right? Because we can't verify it anyway. Okay, but anyway, that was like the first taste that I got into the afterlife, and that kind of made me stop fearing life and death. But, that's more of like after death. I stopped being afraid of after death. But now, um, I started having fear about death itself, right? Because the more I think about it, there's no way to comfortably die, right? If you do, then it's just a really great blessing. It's a great gift, but it's very likely statistically that you won't. It's very likely that you are not going to get the death that feels the most comfortable. So, in the face of a lot of pain, in the face of a lot of discomfort, in the face of a lot of like sudden, physical trauma and things like that, how do we do that? Like, how do we deal with that? And so, that's when I turned to Buddhism, and in the perspective of Buddhism, right, which is dealing with the Dharma, the reality of things, there's impermanence. Nothing is permanent. That's in terms of time. And there's this notion of a non-atomic self, which has to deal with space. So right now, this hair is a part of me, but it will fall out whether because I pull it out or it gets pulled by my training partner or I get a haircut. So this thing, my nails and the skin cells, I think these are mine at the moment, but then cell division, flake goes away, and then it doesn't become a part of me anymore. But okay, so that's the after. But where did this come from? Where did this cell come from? Where did the protein, the fat, where did the plasma required? Where did the nucleic acid? Where did all the things that are necessary for it to replicate? Where did it come from? It came from food. It came from things that I ate. So something goes from not being me to after ingestion being me. And then after that, it returns to not being me again. That's the grand flow of things, right? So right now, there's like protein, there's like a nitrogen, there's like carbon, and there's all these elements here. But over time, it's gonna go back into nature, and then it's gonna reform another thing. Maybe it'll be the water I drink. Maybe it'll be in the air I breathe. Maybe it'll be something else. So this kind of part piecewise death is already happening. And but I don't mourn the death of all of my cells, right? So that means there's this thing called my cells. My cells dying, I don't grieve because it's a part of me, but it's not me. My cell indicates there is a cell and there's this entity called me, which is in an ownership relationship. So what is that me? What are you? What is this thing that I think is me? Because at first I thought it was my body, but my body dies every day. So it's gotta be something more steady, more longer term than my body. Then what is it that when I die, like what is this thing that's gonna die? And the more you ask this question, the more you try to define what I am, the more difficulty you will have pinning down what I am. Everything that I think I am, there's gonna be a counter argument for why it's not comprehensively me, why it's not atomically me. Moreover, yes, although we can look at it from the perspective of death of a cell, when water becomes ice, water doesn't die, and then ice is not born, right? It's the same molecules just undergoing change. So same with cells. Carbon and the nucleic acid and plasma and water and all of that used to be contained within a different container, but through consumption, it is temporarily inside of my container, and then it'll leave, and then it'll rejoin the universe again. Everything that happens in this universe is contained within itself. There's not going to be, like the energy mass equilibrium, right? Like they're the same thing. Everything in this universe is basically contained within itself. It's just different formations, different temporary bonds of it. When you look, death and life exist in a certain kind of a time-framed perspective. But when you zoom into it or when you zoom out to it, all you can find is that there is change. And this is why in Mahayana Buddhism, you hear no life, no death. So this concept is something that's nice to know in your head. But there's a very big difference between knowing these concepts and actually digesting it inside of you, right? So if you want to explore that a little bit more in depth, it has to be kind of that uncomfortable conversation with yourself. When I die, so like we have all these like calls to the void, right? Where we're driving and then we're like, what if I swerve like this and I just die? And when an airplane is in turbulence, you think about all these painful things that you're going to experience, right? Where does that fear come from? Why are we afraid of pain? Of course, it hurts. But is our only option against pain, is our only option against death suffering? And your answer may be yes, and that's fine. But the more important thing is, every time we have an answer for ourselves, we have to ask again, but is it? Is this the truth, or is this something that I believe to be the truth, but not necessarily the actual truth? And these types of inquisitions within yourself is what actually makes the knowledge that lives inside of your head integrate into your life. So that, I think, is the more meaningful work than just knowing these concepts but not applying it to your life. So if you want to explore those things, you have meditation, the Korean type of meditation, where you sit down and you just focus on these questions and you keep answering them. It must be this, but is it? Maybe not. Then is it this? And if you can do that process without retreating, without being distracted, then that's the practice of Korean meditation. And a part of it is something you can experience with my guide to Buddhist practices, which you can grab from the video description below.